For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. On infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections.
If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who want it until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious.
Violence and vandalism is being led by Antifa and other radical left-wing groups who are terrorizing the innocent, destroying jobs, hurting businesses, and burning down buildings. They are coming after me because I am fighting for you. That's what's happening.
Greetings, fellow thought criminals, and thank you for joining the insurrection. I'm Michael Lauer, and today I'm joined by Nick Rogers, host over at the Big Timber Lodge. How you doing this morning, Nick?
Doing really good. Thanks for having me on, sir.
Well, thank you for being here. And you are, of course, a resident of the People's Republic of Colorado. And you and a lot of others have really been fighting to try to save that state. But I think, unfortunately, in your election on Tuesday, I don't know if it's salvageable, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, a lot of people are freaked out over Melat Kiros because, she's going to be appointed to the U.S. House District 1 come November, most likely, and she's going to be another DSA puppet up in D.C., but realistically, she was just one of 4 people that is a DSA puppet. We also had Graciela Orlando, who picked up the Democrat nod for State Senate District 4, Iris Halpern, who picked up State House District 6, and then also the one that scares me, Amanda Gonzalez, who picked up the Democrat nomination for Secretary of State, who has openly said, as Secretary of State, she will push a full redistricting to get rid of any sort of red representation, but also she wants to make voting even more accessible here in Colorado, which is insane because we already have automatic voter registration and also automatic mail-in ballots being sent out to everybody that's registered to vote. The only way that you can make this more accessible is by allowing illegals to vote in our elections. And people might say, there's no way that anybody would do that. I dug into the whole DSA website yesterday. Yes, that is part of their pillars. One of their 4 pillars is to allow non-citizens to vote in the U.S. elections.
Yeah, we already see this creeping in other places, California and New York, and I think Washington, D.C., and I know there's been a few others that have teased this idea of allowing illegals to vote in local elections or non-citizens. Some haven't gone full on to illegal aliens, but they're valuable members of the community too, and they deserve a voice in what happens here. Now, again, you got to have skin in the game. We've got to actually start addressing and fixing this problem. But yes, the DSA, as we discussed on here before, they openly admit. I mean, we played I should have grabbed it for this morning, but their New York lead or president of the DSA or whatever you call him, I don't know, I guess comrade of the DSA, he's out there openly saying, we are using the Democrat Party's infrastructure so that we can win and take over. So essentially, they wear the Democrat Party as a skin suit. They know that the voting base will get behind their policies. It's hard to compete with Santa Claus, not to mention these are a lot of miseducated moonbats due to our educational system here, and it's just utter failure. There's a great article up on Liberty Daily right now. Everything you need America needs to know about the DSA's Marxist platform. And they actually get into this, exactly the point you made about open voting for all, and taking over our systems, ending policing, ending prisons. And this is openly what they're campaigning on. But for some reason, I don't know if the left is just all mentally ill or just detached from reality. These are policies that don't work and are going to destroy our country. We're already seeing that in New York and other places where they've embraced socialism. But this is a problem that's going to expand and get worse. I would hope this would wake Americans up, but I think right now with some of the economic struggles and other things going on, people want a solution. And if the DSA is going to be out there, be Santa Claus and hand out a bunch of free things, it's hard to compete against that.
Yeah, so I mean, this is phase 2 of the Cloward pivot strategy, right? So phase 1 of the Cloward pivot strategy is to essentially bankrupt the system or break a system to the point where it has to be replaced, and society has said, "Hey, this isn't working for us." And
Yep.
they were smart about it. It was developed by the communists, and it was a way to overtake the free market capitalist societies of the world. And they have been doing it now in the United States for years, especially targeting the younger generations that are going to college and becoming well educated. And our government has been complicit in this. The United States
Oh,
government has
yeah.
been complicit in this. And like the biggest issue, and this is the thing that I talk about, is if you wanted to stop communism in the United States, you could literally stop it overnight.
Hmm.
The largest indoctrination stations that we have is modern day higher education institutions,
Yep.
universities, colleges. Now, granted, they even teach this BS in, education that's public education from like kindergarten through 12th grade, but it's not pushed at the level at which it's pushed in universities. And the United States government owns 92% of all student loan debt.
Yeah.
$1.69 trillion is owned by the United States government. If the US government said, "Hey, we will give you a student loan, but you cannot go to a college or a university that is teaching you to hate America and teaching you how to overthrow America," then you can't get the loan. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, overnight, universities would be like, "Well, maybe we should drop these communist professors and communist teachings because now our money's gone."
Yeah. Another idea I've heard that I like is forcing the colleges to co-sign on the student loans. So if they get out there with their degree in grievance studies, and can't find a job, then the university's on the hook for it. Same thing for miseducating the students and turning them into little communist douchebags. Um, Again, one of these things that Trump's keeps talking about that we've got to put an end to is this idea of expanding the ability for Chinese students to come here to the U.S. That he wants to push that up to either 5 or 600,000 students from where it's at now at about 300,000. And this is as a bailout to these universities. No. We need to crush them. They need to suffer for what they've done. We need to eliminate these anti-American institutions and the infestation in our country, because it is just churning out blue-haired moonbats that are gradually destroying our country as they get behind policies like this dingbat DSA person you guys just put through, Malak or whatever her name is, or the others. Because these seats, though they want is the primary, these are essentially a sure win for these people. They will end up in Congress. There is no real conservative opposition in most of these states. In some of these races, they're not even running candidates because that's what a failure the GOP is right now. But they are going to get in. They are going to be seated. And you were on with Sharona Bishop the other day, and one of the things you guys discussed, where I think you really hit the nail on the head, but we have to find our testicles and actually do something. There's already laws that would prevent these people from serving. I think that Congress should refuse to seat any of them because they've espoused beliefs previously that their stated goal is to destroy America, destroy Western civilization, and we cannot have infiltrators poison within our government doing this. We need to actually start enforcing this, and not just with the elected leaders, with all these federal workers in D.C. that are sabotaging things along the way.
Absolutely. I mean, is the DSA model compatible with the current American model that we've been using for the past 250 years? The short answer is no, it is not.
Mm-hmm.
The DSA operates within the existing political system to run candidates. As you mentioned, they're using the Democrat platform to actually shuttle their candidates to the top.
Yeah.
But their ultimate goal is not to reform capitalism, but to dismantle and replace it. They
Yeah.
want to completely dismantle the American model and replace it. Achieving the DSA's platform would require rewriting the U.S. Constitution and outlawing the private ownership of major industries. We are literally
Yeah.
allowing a communist takeover. And the big thing, I dove more into it yesterday, and I wrote a paper about it. There's been over 40 nations that have become communist, and
Yeah.
only one of them was done democratically without any sort of bloodshed. And it really wasn't even a nation. It's considered a microstate, and it's inside of Italy. Every other real nation has become communist through either a bloody civil war, a bloody revolution, or a hostile takeover of a foreign country.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, the 1954 Communist Control Act says it's illegal to be communist in this nation. However,
Mm-hmm.
the 1969 Supreme Court ruling said, oh, you could be communist as long as your speech isn't leading towards violence. I say revisit this ruling and look at what has happened in history with all of the communist nations and tell me how people that are pushing the DSA platform, which is communism, aren't inciting violence, because we are marching towards a civil war when the bloody revolution happens.
Yep.
And yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, it's just there's it's inevitable, right? Like people are like, oh, people are tired of the trope of we're headed towards a civil war. Look at history. I did research on every single nation that's gone to communism, which is what DSA is. It is worse than socialism. They use the term Democrat and socialism in the name. It's just a new moniker for communism. That's all it is.
Yes.
And every nation that has gone to become communist did so through bloodshed, lots of bloodshed, hundreds of millions of people dying. And that's the only way to get there. And one of the major reasons why there's bloodsheds is because people that own businesses, farms, are religious, refuse to give up their businesses and their money. They refuse to give up their farms, and they refuse to give up their religion. And all three of those create conflict with the new DSA party, and the DSA party resorts to violence. It's the same trope that's happened with communism all throughout history. It is going to lead to violence. It will lead to a civil war if our federal government doesn't stop this now.
Yeah, exactly. And essentially, it's because their key platform, what it really is greed. It is desire. It is wanting to have what your neighbor has, to steal that. But in reality, the people at the top know they're going to live high on the hog. They're going to be the millionaires and billionaires. They want to steal the resources from other people. And if you've built up a life, you've worked hard, you've built a business or a farm or whatever else, you don't want to give that up. So instead, they pretend that somehow these people are the oppressors over everyone else. They exploit people's envy and laziness, and essentially that's what pushes the agenda. But we are already seeing this wanting to undo America and rewrite things. Ethiopian-born socialist, an anchor baby, Malak Kiros, wants immediate pathway to citizenship for every single illegal alien, and they pretend this is compassion. Oh, these are just poor people that want a better life for their kids. Well, you know what? At the end of the day, we are a country. We are not a Disney movie. I don't care where you came from or what the situation is at this point. You have to be adding something to America. We are going to open the door and let you here. In reality, after we conduct mass deportations and remove all the illegals here, we need to have a moratorium, a ban on new immigration for at least 10 years to allow for assimilation. Now, during that period, I do think we can have a small number of either highly qualified, I always forget what the visa is, the best and brightest visa, people that are like that, scientists from wherever.
Visas.
No, it's a step above that. H-1B just gets abused. There's it's a supreme talent visa. It's a lot of times for like athletes or top scientists, things like that. We can leave that open. And I think we could have a small number of legitimate asylum case visas here and there that are most likely to send a message. You could keep that under $5,000 a year. And again, as long as we're actually allowing for assimilation, maybe we could get back to being a proper country again instead of having these divisions, all these little enclaves, whether it's Ethiopians or Somalis or MS-13 from El Salvador. We've got to go back to actually looking out for our self-interest and only doing things that build up our nation. We do not need anybody else suckling at the teat of America, destroying our country, ending cohesion, and living off our tax dollars.
Yeah, that's a big thing right there, is giving away our money, and not just to other nations, and not to just to other people of other nations, but also to all these nonprofits and NGOs. I mean, we're seeing some numbers come out from places where they're like, oh, we've spent $500 million in the past 3 years on homelessness, and the homelessness has gotten worse. Well, you're incentivizing these people. Like the director of homelessness up in Denver makes $500,000 a year, and the homelessness has gotten worse. Well, no shit, Sherlock. When you're making that kind of money, do you really want the problem to go away? No, you don't want to. You don't want that to go away. You want to make it worse so you make more money. And that's a big issue here. And also, I see a lot of the commies say, well, corporations are bad because they lobby politicians. I agree too. Take the lobbyists out of DC, right? Let's do that. That's one thing that I could agree with these DSA people. That's about it, is take the money out of DC, get the corporations out of Washington. But that's it. And I mean, they want free healthcare. They want free education. They want, no incarceration. They want all drugs to be legalized. It literally sounds like a dystopian nightmare that's been tried out in like places like Oregon, Portland, Oregon, and whatnot. And even Portland, Oregon this past year walked back their, decriminalization of hard drugs, because it just turned Portland into a horrible scene that was unlivable for most people. Even the most progressives of progressives were like, hey, I'm tired of walking out of my front door of my apartment every day and there's a dead guy in the stairs who shot up fentanyl, thinking it was heroin. I don't know. At this point too, where's the spine in our politicians? We need politicians like the founding fathers that were willing to pick up muskets and say, okay, enough is enough. Like where are those guys? Because I think there's enough red-blooded patriots in America that are willing to defend this nation. I know I'm one of them. I served 9 years, but I'm waiting for somebody that has a position of power to say, okay, enough is enough. America is being abused. It is being raped by, illegal immigrants. It's being raped by our politicians and foreign interest groups. Enough is enough. It's time to defend her. The blood of the tree of liberty is thirsty. Let's go get our watering pails. Where's that politician?
I don't know. I think that's what a lot of people are waiting for but here's again, the big problem is, and this is where the dissatisfaction is from people on the right now, is we vote for people to take care of these problems before they get to the point where they are right now, and they refuse to do their job. We've had 19 months now. They can't codify any of these executive orders that Trump's passed. They can't even pass the Save America Act. We're going to get more to that later. But this is something, with 85% approval in most polls right now. It's one of the few things that approval has gone up for, not down, in the last few months. Which is crazy, because that means even a majority of Democrats want it, no matter how you cut the numbers. It's common sense. And if people don't trust their elections, then you no longer have the consent of the governed, and that is the direction we're heading in right now.
Well, it's the conversation that we had yesterday. It's what did Rush Limbaugh say? The Democrats and the Republicans both have the same agenda. It's just the Democrats are taking a Ferrari and the Republicans are loading up a school bus. I think that was the quote. And
something pretty close to that. Yeah.
And I mean, realistically, I think that, what we're seeing now is because we talk about election fraud. Oh man, there's election fraud. But realistically, right? Let's be honest about this. Do I think the Colorado elections are fair ballots? Hell no, absolutely not. We had Tina Peters here, who, thank God, was released from prison due to, Polis having some common sense and commuting her sentence. However, we have the House, we have the Senate, we have the presidency, we have the SCOTUS, and we can't get anything that's for America passed through any of these chambers right now. SCOTUS just betrayed us with birthright citizenship. We've got,
Yep.
Trump. I love Trump, but at the same time, I'm like, why are you granting H-2 visas to the illegals working agriculture, saying, hey, we're not going to come after you guys? We didn't say only deport the criminals. We wanted them all deported, right? Like
Yep.
all of them deported. And then you've got the House and the Senate, passing bills that give illegal immigrants, money for housing, and they refuse to pass the Save America Act. And people are like, the damn Senate Republicans, as you mentioned, the Save America Act has more favorability now than it ever has, and that's amongst Democrats and Republicans. Why aren't the Democrats beating the war drums the same way Republicans are, calling for the heads of our senators, saying, pass the damn Save Act. This is a bipartisan issue for all of America. The only thing that I could think of is there is some sort of agenda that is either agreed upon inside of DC, or there's outside interests that are feeding money into these people bank accounts, and their agenda doesn't align with the Save America Act and for America only. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is. And unfortunately, it's people on both sides want the open borders right now. People at the top, they want cheap labor on one side, and voters and disproportionate representation because the illegals are counted in the census. So, I mean, there's a lot of states right now, like California, Illinois, New York, that would lose a huge amount of their congressional representation if all of a sudden we stopped counting all the illegal aliens. And that's part of the reason why they want them here. When you have millions within your state border, you're getting multiple congressional reps that you should not have, and undue power in the Electoral College. So they want to keep that grift going. I mean, I also keep hearing that there's at least 6 Republican senators that only have their seats through fraud. The elections. Yep. I mean, we're starting to hear more about this, and some point this week, I have a feeling it's probably going to be next week now. There's supposed to be a big report coming out from the DOJ, but just going over some of the details that have been released so far, in 3 states now, we know for a fact that in the 2020 election, there are not enough ballots to end up with the numbers that were reported at the end of the election. In Georgia, they're down 20,000 some odd ballots just in one county, hundreds of thousands in some states where there's no signatures, there's no verification, there's just extra ballots that were tallied, but they don't exist. In Fulton County, we know that for sure. They went in and totaled how many physical ballots there were, and there weren't enough to come up with the total that they had on once the election was certified. This has to stop. Americans have to trust our voting system. We do need to get rid of the machines. We do really need to go back to a system of paper ballots, but we also have to have observers in there. And this is just one part of the problem. But let me go ahead and bring up our next slide here, get us back on target here. Oversight Project says, no, I mean, the tangents are good. Oversight Project says ICE should deport pregnant illegal immigrants after SCOTUS birthright citizenship ruling. This is a great idea. I've also heard people saying, the airlines used to do a much better job about policing. If the woman was, 8.5 months pregnant, they wouldn't let her fly into the United States from a foreign country. I think we need to go back to that policy. And people don't like it, they can shut the hell up. We have to do things that are good for our country. We are not the world's piggy bank. We are not the world's police. And we need to get back to policy that uplifts America instead of, the Constitution and our laws are not designed to be a suicide pact. And that's what the left thinks they are. We have to get back to something that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was doing research on it, but after, what was it? The 18, I forget what year it was, but it was after the civil rights, and when the whole 14th Amendment was ratified, they were talking about, it's Kim, what's his name? God, I can't remember the guy's name. But essentially they said the airspace over the United States, also the airspace, right? Like mandates it's US territory. So if somebody's on an international flight from China flying over the United States to like Mexico, and the woman's pregnant, she gives birth during flight over the United States, that baby is now a U.S. citizen, which is insane to me. How the hell is that even, like they're not even coming, like touching the ground, and that person's now a baby, is a U.S. citizen and gets all the birthright abilities, and then at the age of 21 can then tell the U.S. government, oh yeah, you're going to give my parents a green card as well? That's what people
Yeah.
don't realize. It's not just, hey, this baby is going to, become a U.S. citizen. It's at the age of 21, then they now could get green cards for their parents. Don't tell me there isn't an initiative or something that instigates parents that are in a crappier country to be
Yeah.
like, hey, let's work really hard here. We'll take a trip to America, have a baby, come back in 21 years. We'll all go back to the United States and we'll live high off the hog because we'll be
Yeah.
refugees or immigrants or whatever. It's nuts. It's
Yeah.
just crazy.
Well, we got to end chain migration. I heard, and this is a joke, guys, but it's pretty funny if you got a dark sense of humor. That maybe we need to issue a well, one, we really do need to end chain migration. That's a whole nother problem in and of itself. But they said what we need to do is have mandatory abortions for illegal aliens. If they're here having kids, you snatch them up off the street, you give them an abortion, a peaceful abortion, as the left would say. And how could they possibly argue against that?
Right. Yeah, it's not a human, right? It's not.
Yeah, right,
human,
right.
Really. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Modern day illegal immigration is just modern day slavery. Unfortunately, though, compared to the slavery of the 1800s, where the master of the house was, paying to take care of the slaves and feeding them and giving them health care and then benefiting from their slave labor, what we have today is companies hiring illegal immigrants, paying them what we would consider slave wages, $9 an hour, $6 an hour. But instead of that company having to pay for their health care and their food and their housing, it's the rest of the people. It's a modern day twist on slavery because we are paying for their Section 8, we're paying for their food stamps, we're paying for their WIC, all through our taxes, while these companies get the benefit off their incredibly cheap labor costs and not having to pay a payroll tax. And I think the best way to go after this is to go after the companies, but too many of these companies, are in bed with these politicians, and it'll never happen.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the easiest solutions would be to mandate E-Verify. And I know there's a lot of people out there on our side of the aisle that freak out with E-Verify for some reason. But you're already having to report the same information every time you fill out an I-9 or a W-9 for a job. So whether you're being paid essentially cash, paying your taxes later, or your regular W-2 payroll employee, you're already handing over this information. So I don't understand your argument. But this is a system that's already in place right now. It is optional. In a lot of states, they will give you a discount on your work comp and other insurances as long as you're E-Verify compliant. But we mandated this that, hey, every employer, what you got to do is submit anybody that's working for you. Go online. You have to fill this out with your employees' names, date of birth, and social security number, and we're going to look for mismatches. Then we'll know what companies to go send ICE to go grab employees. And if you have anybody that's obviously abusing the system, then you need to go after that company. We need to put it on them. Now, I think this is the only way we're going to have real enforcement is that there's consequences for companies that hire illegal aliens, whether it's directly or through staffing companies, because this is the other big thing that's been going on, as we've reported on up here in Springfield, Ohio, where they eat the cats and dogs, is they are laundering a lot of these Haitians through a few different staffing agencies up there, putting them at warehouses and factory jobs and paying them anywhere between about half and 2/3 of what an American makes for the same job. So at the end of the day, the staffing company gets their little cut. The employer, they're paying less overall despite having to pay a markup for a staffing company because they're getting paid such a smaller amount of wages. Not to mention, they're not responsible for health care or any of the other added costs in addition to your paycheck. So it works out great for them, and they just turn a blind eye. They say, oh, no, the company we hired to come out here, they said all these people are legal to work here. It's obviously not what's going on, but they can they can have that denial because, somewhere in the paperwork, that's what it says.
Wow. So, I mean, I was looking this up right here because I remember reading this article about Idaho State Representative Mickelson. Did you hear about this? So she's a Republican state representative, had her
refresh my memory.
So she had her family farm raided because she's a Republican state rep with illegals working her family farm in Idaho.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So
she should be thrown out of office. And honestly, I think we need much harsher penalties, especially people like this that are elected or appointed leaders. We need to have some sort of a dereliction of duty, betrayal of the public trust, something like that. Additional charges, minimum of 20 years in jail, up to execution, and start making them actually pay for their crimes.
Oh, let's bring the gallows back. I honestly think if we bring back the gallows and put them in front of every county courthouse and start hanging people publicly again, I think
Hmm.
crime would drop drastically. Another big thing too, and this really pisses me off, is when I see, these illegal immigrant child rapists or just rapists, and then the
Yeah.
cops are like, you're getting deported, buddy. You're getting deported, buddy. Like that's gonna satiate my anger. No. Send this child rapist to Idaho. Speaking of Idaho, which as of yesterday legalized execution by firing squad for child rape, send all of these illegals to Idaho and line them up and publicly broadcast it on a pay-per-view system. Execution of child rapists that come from other nations. I would pay big money to watch that. It would make me feel a lot better than knowing we're throwing these border jumpers back over in their country and then they're going to
Yeah.
be back here in a couple days doing the exact same thing. I'm tired of deportations. I think that they should get like a tag in their ear or something like that. And if you get caught jumping the border again, it should just automatically be an execution on site.
Yeah, summary execution. I was making this point the other day. We don't even need to tag their ear, though. And we have good biometrics now. You can, as you're dropping them off back in Waziristan, get a facial scan, iris scan, fingerprints, DNA sample, everything else. And yeah, if you turn back up after being deported once, then it should be just summary execution. They take you to the ICE facility or wherever. You get your last bottle of water and then a bullet in the brain, a lead aspirin. Because if we don't have deterrents that actually work, then you're going to continue to have these economic migrants come over the border because they know there's no real penalties for it. You're going to have the criminal illegal, like the hard criminal illegal aliens trying to come in no matter what. Those are the ones, affiliated with MS-13 or wherever, because they don't care about the law or the consequences. They're here to enrich themselves. They're violent. So there's really not much you can do besides shut down avenues, make it more difficult for them to get here. But if the deterrent is high enough for people that are economic migrants, then that's going to shut down. And this is not that hard. Again, if we had dual enforcement of forcing the employers to be the eyes and ears for immigration and custom enforcement. And then we had actual consequences for the ones that we know are abusing the laws, like a lot of these meat packing plants, the farms and other things. And again, a lot of these problems are interconnected. Again, it depresses American wages. They say, oh, Americans don't want to work out on the farms anymore. Well, yeah, they don't want to work out there for $10 an hour because that's not a realistic wage. Times have changed. And if you have to bring up the price of, lettuce from $1.50 a head to $2 a head so that you can pay an American to do that job a reasonable wage, that's what we have to do. You can't keep exploiting third world slaves to keep the price down and line your own pocket.
No. Well, that's the big thing. So there's a couple of things to look at. An economist looked at, if you have a farm or a construction company, let's say a construction company, and you're looking for like day laborers to do framing, and you got to pay an American $25 an hour to get them out there with his tools, or you could pay an illegal $15 an hour under the table. At the end of the year, that illegal is going to be making almost the exact same amount of money take home as the American who's making, $10 more an hour.
Yeah.
And the big thing is the company that's hiring the illegal isn't paying a payroll tax now. They're not having to pay for insurance that either. And so, and the thing, people are like, well, you got to pay for insurance. No, they're illegals, especially here in Colorado. If you're an illegal immigrant, you get free healthcare. Literally free healthcare. Yahoo Finance at the beginning of 2024 published an article by UC Health Colorado Springs where the hospital system was complaining about the fact in Colorado illegals get free healthcare, and they were upset. Get this. They were upset at the fact that they can't verify citizen status because they're sure they were forced to give free healthcare to Coloradans who were pretending to be illegals. They had, white guys walking in like me going, my name is Jeff. I am from Mexico. Yeah. And they're like, no, you're not. I'm from Mexico. And they had to give a free healthcare. And and like that, our hospital system was upset at that. So, the fact of the matter is we've got businesses abusing the system because they can skip out on payroll taxes, pay less money, and then they don't have to provide benefits. And
Yeah.
we've got to crack down on that. But also, like here in Colorado, we have a housing shortage of like 107,000 units. If you get rid
Sure.
of all the illegals in Colorado, the what, like 2 million or whatever it is that's estimated to be here,
Good Lord.
they try to keep that number lower, but it's you got to look at the last year that President Biden was president in Colorado. We had one of the largest population booms this state has ever seen. 85% of the people that moved into Colorado in the last year Biden was president were foreign born. Now, there's no census. That's off the Colorado Census.gov website. There's no census status on whether or not they were legal or illegal, but 85% of the people that moved into Colorado the last year Biden was president were foreign-born citizens. The very first year Trump took office, we lost people. More people left than moved into Colorado, and that number dropped from 85% down to 15%. But yeah, we've got to have a hard look at this. But I was just saying, if you get rid of all the illegals in Colorado, we wouldn't have a housing crisis. We would also be less in crisis for water usage because there'd be a lot less people here. If we got rid of all the illegals across America, the 25 to 50 million, how many ever are truly here, that would lower the amount of water needed across the nation drastically. It would provide millions of housing overnight, lowering the cost of housing. It would lower the cost of goods because the demand wouldn't be matching the supply at that point. We could reduce the amount of water needed for agriculture because we wouldn't need to be providing for an additional 40 million people. It would solve so much of America's problems if we just got rid of them all overnight. And people are like, well, who's going to work the fields? Who's going to, scrub your toilets? I'm looking at you, Kelly Osborne. Americans could do those jobs as well.
Yes. Yeah. And that may mean wages have to go up for some of these positions, but that also proves they're being depressed artificially because of the illegal alien slaves that are here now. And again, make no mistake, the Democrat Party has always been the party of slavery. They want these workers here. They want to control them. It's just the target has shifted. But you're exactly right. I mean, there was a great study that came out a week or two ago we covered that showed that during the Biden border invasion, you had a 30% increase in the cost of housing nationwide on average. In some areas were hit much harder than that. And on average, a 20% increase in the cost of rents. And that's basic economics. It's supply and demand. Not to mention a lot of, in the rent case, especially, is a lot of the illegals, depending on your state, they were getting monthly stipends to cover their housing expenses. And some of these are, $6,000+ per month per person in some states. Yeah. But so the landlords don't care. It's just like with the colleges and tuition increases. Suddenly, when Big Daddy government is the one writing the checks, you can charge whatever you want because they're just going to pay it. You're eliminating the normal market conditions that dictate what rent should be in an area, and it really does differ by the area. Like the house that I live in right now that I bought, right now is probably worth locally here $300,000. But if you took the same property and you moved it to like Orlando, Florida, this would probably be an $800,000-900,000 house down there. Yeah. But a lot of it depends where you're sitting at. And it's the same thing's true with rents and housing prices. We're going to get more into that here in a minute. But you're exactly right.
So yeah, I mean, just to touch on that, like I live in Colorado Springs, right? Colorado Springs has 5 U.S. military bases. We have the Air Force Academy, we have Cheyenne Mountain, we've got Fort Carson, we've got Peterson, and we've got Schriever. If you're in the military and you're stationed somewhere, you get what's called basic allowance for housing. The rental market here in Colorado Springs has taken notice of that. And so we keep driving our rental prices up in Colorado Springs. It's one of the few places where you are going to pay nearly double to rent versus having a mortgage. My mortgage on my house is $1,569 a month. I refinanced in the 2020s. Granted, it was at a low interest rate, but since the 2020s, according to Zillow, I can rent my house out for $3,000 a month. And it's
I have no doubt.
It's because the government is paying for all the military to come and rent properties. And as a renter or a landlord, a slumlord, I could take advantage of that system.
Yeah, because it's subsidized. They don't feel the actual impact from their rent. And the same thing is true with the illegals. I am concerned. Rhino Tom Tillis says push for the Save America Act is undermining confidence in elections. Well, I think he's got that backwards. I think Congress's refusal to pass this, the continued excuses from these rhinos in the Senate, are why we don't trust the elections. Americans are not buying the excuses anymore. I don't know about you, but I have never met one black person that can't get an ID. And honestly, if I did, I would say that person probably doesn't deserve to vote. If you're too stupid to get an ID at this point, then we don't need your input on our elections.
Right.
There are no racial barriers or anything else to having identification, and in most states, you have to have it to do basic things. Go in a federal building, buy alcohol, cigarettes, blah, blah, blah. We all know that. And in a lot of states like Ohio, if you're over the age of 18, if you're out in public, the law dictates you carry an ID. So I am sick and tired of these excuses. The real thing that they don't want is accountability in elections, and they really don't want this citizenship test for voters. So I don't know what we do, but we have to push this through, especially after this betrayal by the Supreme Court.
Yeah, no, the SAVE Act. So unfortunately, even if I'll still take it, I mean, even if we could get the SAVE Act passed today, I'll take it. Unfortunately, it's not going to be able to be truly enforceable going into this November's election because the elections have already started. There's states like California, Colorado, many others. We've already done our primary elections. They've already done the mail-in ballots. The damage has already been done. I think you could partially implement the SAVE Act going into November, but it fully wouldn't take effect until the following election year. And I think that was done by design. And I think that there's a good chance that the Senate Republicans are going to pass the SAVE Act in the 11th hour to save face going into the midterm elections. But judicially, once states start telling, judges, hey, we can't implement this because we've already printed up, 6 million ballots and they're ready to go. We can't change our system. And legally, the judges are going to be like, you're right. This is too short notice. Like, this would have needed to be passed probably back in January, maybe February or March in order for it to have been fully implemented come the midterm primaries and then also the general election. I don't know. We're starting. What about John Kasich? Did you see John Kasich talking about the craziness with the removing temporary status for the Haitians? And he's like having as well.
And DeWine, our current governor and previous governor John Kasich. These people think the Haitians need to be protected. They're an intricate part of our community. Again, I go back to, first of all, we don't need the 20,000 that they dumped into Springfield. That's only creating problems. That place looks like a third world war zone now. Population of 55,000, you drop 20,000 additional people in there. You've just destroyed that community. I've actually got a story. I'll get to it here in a second, where the locals are celebrating after they ended the TPS. But they shouldn't be here anyway. So for the Haitians specifically, it was supposed to be an 18-month temporary protected status back in, I think, 2012, after an earthquake there. They were supposed to have 18 months, and then they were supposed to go back to Haiti to go, rebuild, make Haiti great again. Well, here we are, 16 years or 14 years later, and they're still here. So it's like everything else. The government policy doesn't end. But at some point, you got to go home. Not to mention, if you've been here this long and you still haven't assimilated, you haven't become an American citizen, then sorry, we don't need your ass. Go back home to wherever you came from. That's clearly where you want to be. You don't want to be here. You're only here to exploit us, exploit our benefits and our generosity, and harm the country. And again, we've got to start doing what's best for America. We cannot be even the slightest bit concerned with what's good or bad for other countries around the world. Any other country.
100%. I mean, we're still number one in the nation as far as like an economy goes, or not in the nation, but in the world as far as like economy and per capita wealth. I was talking about it last night. I'm sure you saw that study that came out like several months ago where like if the UK became the 51st state, the UK would be the poorest state in the nation. And they're like, really? We're poorer than Mississippi? They're like, yeah. And it's just because of the fact that even our poor people here in America have cell phones and apartments, and, our homeless people have shelters and food, and they're fat and they're drinking and they're doing drugs, and they could get on the internet and they could travel and they get free stuff and free healthcare. Like, America's still great, but we are starting to feel the squeeze of all of our global giving and lining the pockets of NGOs and nonprofits. and we're seeing the fraud exposed by organizations like Doge. And as you mentioned earlier, they didn't codify any of that. Like why is it Congress, our Republican Congress and Senate, codifying any of this fraud findings to say this can no longer exist? They're literally they're running out the clock until Trump is no longer in office. They're hoping that Democrats going to come back. And both Republicans, rhinos and also dinos, are waiting for that clock to run out so that they could then start pumping money back into these organizations.
Yes.
Getting their campaigns and their vacations paid for. It's disgusting. It is disgusting. I think, we were talking about it. We're at, if you talk about the 4 boxes, the soap box, the ballot box, the jury box, and we're at the cartridge box point at this, because we're not seeing any sort of judicial ramifications for these people committing fraud, for the Epstein people, for any of the, the politicians that were attempting sedition or treason. Like, I'm so sick of seeing stuff on X of, the DNI found out that Obama openly said he was committing treason against America. Then arrest him. Arrest him.
Yeah, we're sick and tired of it. This is the thing. Like, the big thing, and I really did think Trump learned his lesson from his first term to now. I thought the DOJ would really come out swinging, but instead we've got nothing. We've gotten some 10 times now. They've teased out there. They're getting ready to arrest John Brennan. Guys, there's a grand jury in Florida looking into John Brennan. There's another one up in D.C. We're going to go get him. Yeah, that ain't happening. Same with, even this crap with Comey and Letitia James. They dropped those cases originally. I know they've refiled them now. They're not going anywhere. It's pathetic. And we have to actually take...
Why didn't we get a perp walk? Why didn't we get a perp walk with James Comey the way that we got a perp walk with all of the Republicans underneath the Biden, where they had news crew cameras waiting with the feds to arrest these people so they could film it and put their faces all over the news? Why didn't we get that with James Comey? Why didn't we get that with Michael Bolton? You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's just crazy to me. Or John Bolton. I don't know if Michael Bolton was a singer, but John Bolton.
Yeah.
Why didn't we
Michael
get that
Bolton,
with
we're
him?
coming for you too.
Yeah.
Too much soft jazz. We're gonna deport you.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I think that, the lack of vengeance from our current Department of Justice has left a lot of people pissed off, because if you're making all of these huge grandiose claims about what the Democrats have been doing to the nation for this long, going on 10 years now, the Democrats have been committing this type of treason, and you're making all of these claims and you say we have the evidence, and then you're saying after you're elected again, we have all this evidence, but yet there's no retribution. There's no major arrests. This is
no
not
justice.
Stopping. No justice.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton, I just read an article today. She told the intelligence community, do not turn over information to the new DNI head, which is crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah, and we've got to actually start enforcing these things. But this is again the baseline problem. Is you go to D.C., there's just too many, undocumented Democrats, trans Republicans. They pretend to be, they identify as Republicans, but they're really just uniparty Democrats, globalists. Yep. That's part of the problem. But we do control the Department of Justice right now. You can actually go out and make arrests. I mean, Congress handed the DOJ, I think it was 20 or 21 criminal referrals for people that lied to Congress this time last year. I think it was actually in the middle of July. So we'll call it 11 months ago. Not one arrest out of that group. And I get, you can make the argument, well, Fauci was one of those that can't arrest him because he has the pardon, blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't care. Arrest the other 19. Let's deal with the illicit pardons from the Biden auto pen too, instead of dropping that case, Harmeet Dillon. We've got to stop pretending and actually accomplish things. I'm glad they can arrest some of these Somali pirates here in the U.S. that have been ripping us off for years. That needs to happen. But what we really need are the people further up the chain that orchestrated this. The political appointees, the government employees, the bureaucrats, and the elected officials that turned a blind eye, participate, or allowed it to happen. I saw they just arrested somebody that works for Ilhan Omar for participating in one of these scams in Little Mogadishu up there.
Surprise.
Yeah, you know what? If she really married her brother, put up or shut up, deport her, kick her ass out of the country. I am sick and tired of hearing about it. She can go make Somalia great again, and she can take all her friends up there with her.
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, it's one of those things we were talking about yesterday. Department of Homeland Security is like patting themselves on the back because they're like, hey, we're deporting 30,000 illegals a month. And I'm like, that's it?
Yeah.
That's it?
If that
30,000
was
a month? Go
if
ahead.
that was 30,000 just from the city of Los Angeles per month, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got to pump those numbers up.
Yeah, put a zero on the end of that number for the per month, and then we can be hitting about 3.6 million a year, which is still going to be shy by probably about 15 to 20 million of what'll be left after Trump's administration is over with. But I mean, Biden brought in, what did they say? 20 million illegals came in underneath President Biden. President
Correct.
Biden brought in 20 billion. So even if we were doing 3.6 million a year, that's still going to end up being less than what, 15 million over a 4-year period, somewhere around
Yeah.
there, or right around 15 million. And so, we wouldn't even be able to get rid of all of the illegals that Biden brought in, even if we were deporting it. We're not even doing that. We're doing 360,000 a year. 360,000. Give me a break. Those are rookie numbers. You got to pump those up.
Exactly. Really, what we need to do is like we were talking about earlier. It's the combination effort. We need to utilize E-Verify. We also need to federally mandate that whether it's at a state level or the federal level, no financial benefits of any kind to illegal immigrants, and start actually prosecuting the people that push it forward. The same with these sanctuary states. You don't get to just say you're a sanctuary state and ignore federal law. So let's quit saying that and actually make some arrests. I do understand that, like when it comes to helping ICE or assisting with ICE, there are some loopholes there where they can essentially say we're not going to work with federal agents, and that's fine because I do think we need to leave those protections in for the time when they're trying to go around round up gun owners or whatever else that comes further down the pike. But you don't get to just say, well, we're a sanctuary state. We're going to actively help illegal aliens to hide their ID like they are in Illinois, where they're doing free name changes for illegal aliens to obfuscate who they are. I mean, this is upside down and backwards. We got to actually start prosecuting people. We need to try them for crimes like sedition, where there'll be real penalties. Otherwise, again, this will never stop. Same with going after the NGOs and everyone else that made this possible and stripping their tax exempt status. Put up or shut up. You can do this, and you can dissolve these corporations. Again, it's not that hard. When the left has power, everybody knows about the Lois Lerner and the IRS targeting scam from the Obama years. When the left utilizes and exceeds the power they're given, whereas our side of the aisle refuses to do it. But I think it's just, again, they're part of the uniparty. They're part of the club. They don't want to interrupt their little cocktail parties. They don't want the New York Times or MS Now to say mean things about them. So they go along with this. It's got to stop.
Yeah, I've always said it takes two types of people to be a politician, either strong or perverted. And the majority of our politicians aren't strong. The majority of them are perverted. And I'm not just talking about in a sexual sense. I'm talking about in the mental type of perversion. And I just, where are the founding fathers when you need them? Right?
Yeah.
Where are our politicians out of Philadelphia that are willing to stand up and say, hey, we need to organize and fix this because the nation is sick, it's dying, and we've got to eradicate the cancer. That's what I'm waiting for as a politician, to actually do that and do like the call to arms. I think if there was an actual group of conservative politicians, or not even conservative, patriot politicians, even if there were some Democrats on board with Republicans, and they say, hey, I'm a veteran. I swore an oath to protect this nation from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And we've got some domestic terrorism going on right now. We need everybody to rise up together, and we need to take our nation back. I think that would be the cattle call. That would be the shot heard around the world 2.0 that would actually get Americans together to organize to say, okay, enough is enough. And then we could address the fraud. We could address the money laundering. We could address the George Soros and the Michael Bloombergs of the world that are funding these types of things. That Chinese guy that's putting money into Antifa.
Neville Sigham.
Yep, that guy. So we need to address all of those. We know that the Soros family has put over $100 million into our elections this year to get their candidates elected. And why? Why, America? Why? Why are we allowing this to happen? Why do the Democrats who claim, especially the DSA, we hate big money in politics, we're a grassroots organization, and it turns out a lot of these politicians that they say are DSA backed candidates are backed by dark money interest groups.
Of course. You know, we're about out of time, so I just want to get you one last story here, and because it's kind of a question I've been asking too. Well, I'll get to that in a second. Rep. Brandon Gill introduces legislation to ban taxpayer-backed mortgages for illegal aliens. Why the hell did this happen to begin with? Illegal alien means it's self-explanatory. You're already violating the law. So how is it that we are going to then ask taxpayers to give criminals our money so they can buy houses and enrich themselves? How did this ever happen to begin with? But when I watch all the fraud from the Leering centers or the autism programs or any of this, like, what, it isn't just that it's being exploited by illegal aliens and that we're all being robbed. It's, why do we have these programs anyway? Why are tax dollars going to fund private mortgages?
Right.
Why are our tax dollars going to pay for autism treatment or whatever else? Like, we already have programs in place for Medicaid, Medicare, for those that really need it. So the rest of these subsidies, why are we forcing people to, giving them the ability to reach into your pocket, grab your wallet, take some of your cash, and then use that to enrich themselves?
I think Marco Rubio said it best. He goes, why is it down in Miami you can have a Cuban that's lived in the United States for the past 50 years? They claimed asylum 50 years ago, got a social security number, paid into Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. They're now retired, they're elderly, and they're making, $800, $900, $1,000 a month. Yet a new refugee is over here making, that's in their 20s, able body, hasn't put one dime into the system, and they're making $3,500 a month plus free housing, free health care, free food
Yeah.
stamps, a free cell phone. It doesn't make sense, right? Even the legal refugees here are fed up with what these asylum seekers and refugees of today are getting, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, people like Annie and others that moved here did things the lawful way, became citizens, or a lot of my relatives, like, they are absolutely furious. They went through a process to come here, and they came here to become Americans. They knew they were leaving wherever they came from behind, whether it was because it was some kind of hellhole or they just wanted better opportunity and a better future for themselves. But they went through the right steps. And we talked about this a lot. An ex was from South America. I dated for a long time. I lived in Florida. Her family, they didn't speak Spanish in their house. They spoke English. They wanted both their kids to become Americans. Now, she was born overseas. Her brother was born here, but same thing. And it isn't like they just wanted to erase their culture or whatever else. It was, they still celebrated things from back where they came from. They still ate a lot of the kind of food at their house, but they were still here to be Americans. Again, they loved America. I saw the pictures from when their parents were granted citizenship. It was a huge deal, a big celebration. They'd finally made it. But we need people, if you're going to come to this country, it needs to be to assimilate, to become Americans. We can't have people coming over here to form, their own little caliphate in Michigan or whatever else. It has to benefit America. Or any words of wisdom you'd like to leave our audience with before we wrap up here? And where can they find you?
You can find me at the Big Timber Lodge on X, YouTube, Rumble, and Kick. I do a lot of podcasting, live streaming there, talking about these types of stuff. I primarily like to focus on Second Amendment rights, but as of lately, been focusing on a lot of just regular politics and national level and international politics. I would say, folks, it doesn't look like the cavalry is coming. We can either hunker in at the Alamo, or we could say, hey, we've already seen how this story is going to play out. Go to a place that is going to keep you safe. Go to a place that is like-minded with your principles and that has good state-level politics, and hunker in there. I'm in Colorado, and at this point, my wife and I are looking at other states because Colorado is imploding in on itself. It's become apparent that it's a globalist test bed for communism. And it seems like no matter how we vote, we can't vote our way out of communism, and all we could do is shoot our way out. But at this point, I'm still surrounded by like 4 out of 5 states that are free states that I could just walk across the border into and agree with their politics. So I'm not at the point where here in Colorado, it's time to start blasting up at the Capitol building. I'm not there because I could still cross the border and go to some place that I would say, I would give you the same advice. If you're embedded in a blue place and you have the opportunity right now, look at moving to a red state, a deep red state,
Yeah.
and go there and get involved with the local politics in the school districts, get involved with the city politics, get involved with the county politics, all the way up to the state level politics. Because realistically, those are the only politics that we can actually control at this point. We can hold state level politicians much more accountable than we can the politicians in DC that run on campaign promises. But then when they get there, both sides don't do anything in the interest of America. And I would just say prepare for the incoming civil war, because if communism through the guise of DSA actually becomes a thing, according to history, there has been no peaceful transition from another governance body into communism without massive bloodshed.
Yep. Well said. Thank you again today, Nick, for joining here today. You're always welcome back. To our audience, thank you for joining us. Please like, share, and subscribe. Help us to grow so we can bring more people the news, the mainstream